Hey guys, K420 back at it again. Oh, this is an important one. So I had to break out the important hat. Those of you who are old fans of mine, hopefully you will respect my choice, who I am going to be voting for in 2020, just as much as I respect yours. Pardon me. And I respect your vote so much that I had done a whole video on this universal mail-in voting and how disastrous it's been. Most of us who are trying to pick up the pieces to our lives don't have time to sit down and recognize what's going on with our voting system and how it's being used as a cure-all to this pandemic, many other things. I'm going to blow your mind with some stuff that I'm sure you haven't heard of today. So let's get to the beginning, because I don't like to bury the lead. If you don't want to listen to my video, or my raspy ex-smoker's voice, well, almost ex-smoker. I'm still smoking, but very little now. Pneumonia will do that to you. If you don't like my voice or you don't like my hat, then just listen to this article and bounce, because it's the gist of it. But I back it up with another 15 minutes of facts if you're interested. So stick around. Let's go. Our famous Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci. God, Dr. Fauci. Whatever Dr. Fauci says is so. Okay, well, let's see what Dr. Fauci says about in-person voting.
Safely go up. Given that this year there is so much concern around the vote?
I think if carefully done according to the guidelines, there's no reason that I can see why that not be the case. For example, when you look at going to a grocery store now in many regions and counties and cities that are doing it correctly, they have X's every 6 or more feet. And it says, don't leave this spot until the person in front of you left their spot. And you can do that if you go and wear a mask, if you observe the physical distancing and don't have a crowded situation. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, obviously, if you're a person who is compromised physically or otherwise, so you don't want to take the chance, there's the situation of mail-in voting that is done for years in many places. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to vote in person or otherwise.
Okay. So,
Vice President,
if Dr. Fauci is your man, then you just heard straight from him. If you want to check it out, I believe Dr. Burke also made a statement. She might have just made no, this is just Fauci's. However, Dr. Burke did make her own statement. You're more than welcome to check it out. Now, we're going to go back a little bit, because along with this coronavirus, we were in the midst of our primaries. Many states chose to go ahead with voting. Many states postponed voting. Many states did mail-in voting for the first time universally. Many states already have, because even in a national election, no matter what, it's still state by state. Each state is still dealing with the election themselves, and then nationally. So we've seen the failures. Maybe just you haven't heard them all in a row. Yeah. Let's check this out. Signed, sealed, and undelivered. Thousands of mail-in ballots rejected for tardiness. Elena Moore of NPR. Susie Sonneborn of Mount Clair, New Jersey, says she tried to be extra careful to make sure her ballot was postmarked on time when she voted in the mayoral race in May. But when she heard that more than 1,100 ballots, 9% of the total, had been rejected, she checked with the local election office and was shocked to discover hers was one of them. It was just really disappointing and surprising that following the instructions that are printed on the ballot, I was set up for failure. Sonneborn insists that she didn't see anywhere that the ballot needed to be received within 2 days of the election count, which was especially frustrating because the mayor's race was decided by only 195 votes. Do you understand that it has been our presidential election before? It has become so close. Anyway, Residents held a rally outside the town hall. The mayor was sworn in, calling for officials to count every vote in future elections. Also, states are reporting that large numbers of rejected ballots, more than 5%, were not counted in Virginia's June primary because they arrived too late. 1% of the ballots in Pennsylvania and Nevada were also not counted for the same reason. In Wisconsin, we're going to get to that in a minute, but Wisconsin's primary, 2,659 ballots rejected for missing the deadline. But the number could have been much higher. About 79,000 ballots were received after Election Day, but were allowed to be counted within the 6-day period on an emergency basis due to Corona. So basically, everybody and their brother got to 6 extra days to vote just because of coronavirus. And they made sure that if you didn't know there was an election, they would come knocking on your door and come on, like, here's a ballot, vote, I'll take it for you. Ballot harvesting and all. Tens of thousands of other ballots were discarded this year for other reasons, most often because of missing or mismatched signature. Last week, the League of Women Voters filed suit in New York State, where more than 34,000 absentee ballots, or 14% of the total, was rejected in the 2018 primary. And you wonder why New York's always been blue, huh? The group wants voters to have the opportunity to correct any problems before the ballots are discarded. Absolutely. The suit is part of a flood of litigation over the mail-in voting this year. Democrats and progressives are suing to change the rules in Florida, where 18,504 vote-by-mail ballots, more than 1.3% of the total, were rejected in the state's March primary for a variety of reasons, including missed deadlines. The lawsuit argues that mail-in ballots should have been only postmarked, not received by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Kirk Nielsen, one of the 10 plaintiffs in this case, said the fate of the ballot is out of the voters' hands once it goes in the mail. He was one of thousands of ballots rejected in the state in 2018. Nielsen said he mailed it 8 days before Election Day. That's sad. Holy cow. But was not received until 8 days after. He worries about being disenfranchised once again. I want to vote by mail this year because of the pandemic. I don't want to get sick at a crowded polling place. I don't want to contribute to spreading the virus by going to a crowded polling place. But that said, I think there's an even greater risk this year of voting by mail, that my mail ballot may not be counted along with thousands of others. His case is scheduled for argument to be heard this month, but Republicans were heartened by the judge's refusals to issue a preliminary injunction against the state's mail-in rules. Of course not. All right, let's keep it going, ladies and gentlemen. Uh-oh. Voting by mail would reduce coronavirus transmission, but has other risks. That's really the gist of this video. This is ProPublica. This is also right at the height of our pandemic. Even then, they were pumping, like they were priming the motor for this one. It was literally the primary, like the election was 6-7 months away. But yeah, they were already deciding that they were going for mail-in vote. Why? Well, at that point in time, anything could have happened. We could have been 100% virus-free by Election Day. Why were they pushing for this? It says, as COVID-19 spreads, many are proposing to hold the November election by mail. Without careful preparation, though, the transition could run into logistical problems and provide opportunities for voter fraud. And then it just quickly goes over, cautionary lessons due to, there were certain elections that showed, and I just talked about most of the ones that they're talking about in this, but I just wanted you to see that these were actual news stories that have been out there that you may not be hearing on your CNNs and your MSNBCs, because they are pushing mail-in voting, cheerleading mail-in vote. No, if you have 2 working legs or hands to wheel your chair, then get your ass to the polls, on November 3rd, because that is the only way that you can 150,000% know your vote was counted. And even then, but that's the most reliable way. Republican or Democrat, that's not any advice for any specific person. That's everybody. If you want your vote to count, no matter independent, Republican, Green Party, birthday party, whatever Kanye West is calling his, All right, I'm here in New York, right? Chaos in New York is a warning. This was a test, okay, you guys. This was just in July during the end of our coronavirus crap. So the first large-scale test of mail-in voting in the pandemic has left 1 in 5 New Yorkers with their votes tossed out. No joke. 1 in 5. Boom, garbage. After more than a month of New York's June 23rd primary elections, state election officials are still counting votes. Yes, you heard that. After 30 days, they were still counting votes. And so there was nobody called. Nobody was the winner 30 days in. Holy cow. Can you imagine the president? What would happen if that was Trump in the White House still? 30 days, they were still counting votes. Oh my God. Over here it says, in the pandemic, every state should vote by mail. You see that off to my right? Wow. Priscilla Southwell, please stop writing things, please. And so, all right, so it says, in the best scenario, election officials hope to declare winners by the first Tuesday in August. This was for New York. 6 weeks after the original election day. It may take longer than that. Election officials in NYC have already invalidated upwards of 100,000 absentee ballots, meaning they were not counted. About 1 out of every 5 that were mailed from 5 boroughs, and furious candidates are already filing lawsuits charging discrimination and disenfranchisement. The chaos in New York is a warning about November's elections. Voting is being transformed by this pandemic. No state has built new election infrastructure. No state has the time or money to make sure vote counting will go smoothly in November. And just about every state is about to be hit with a massive surge of absentee ballots. This is what happens. A New York election official told me over the phone last week. When you jury rig a system that hasn't been designed or implemented or tested. In New York, the election infrastructure, oops, I went too far, was overwhelmed. Sorry, wrong way. I hate these things. They go different ways. In New York, the election infrastructure was overwhelmed by massive increase in voter requesting absentee ballots rather than risking voting in person. Ballot printing forms couldn't keep up with the demand, and the already rickety U.S. Postal Service. I almost think that was set up, guys. I'm here upstate New York. I'm not in the city. But the fact that we had the absolute worst outbreak of corona in the country during our primary. Sorry, guys. My shirt's bunching up. During our primaries, it's kind of, I don't know. To me, it just seems kind of ironic, and I don't believe in coincidences. I'm just not a coincidence type person. So anyway, she said, it's a nightmare in an age of political paranoia, says Richie Torres, city councilman who's currently in the lead for an open congressional seat in the Bronx, the bluest seat in the country, but who is still waiting for the final result, vote count. Every election in the past few months has provided more evidence of a system that isn't able to keep up with the coronavirus. All right, we'll get to Wisconsin in a minute, but how do I say this? Tebow. I just feel like if you guys don't see these all at once, if you look at the dates, they hop around. It's like there's certain people out there trying to let you know, hey, this is impossible. There's no way that this is going to happen and it be fair and just and everyone's vote count, yada, yada. But there's so much other static in the room with all the other BS they fill the news with now. I don't think anybody that really, unless you are very, very up in interest, like if you're up to date and interested on your voting and you know what's going on in the country, whether it be Republican or Democrat. I'm not saying only one person knows what one identity knows what's going on. But if you're up to date on what's going on with the voting, that's probably the only way you really actually stopped and caught some of these articles, which is why I think it's important to put them together in one and have you go, whoa, that's a lot of screw ups in one. How can you have screw ups in all these? And I only did like 5 out of maybe 15 states they had all right, so on with the show. Millions of COVID hit nursing home residents risk losing their vote. Now this is kind of funny because this is like this is from Market Watch, by the way, Eleanor Lays, a couple of weeks ago. I find this funny because nursing homes are supposed to be like the place where this mail-in ballots fraud really kicks in, because they're getting, you've got people with all sorts of stages of dementia that are, and they're all registered to vote. And what happens is stacks of ballots come into the nursing homes. I know this because I've worked in a nursing home during election seasons before, when families have the nursing home would request absentee ballots, or families would even come in and request. It's funny how that happens too. Families would fill them out and whatnot. Anyway, there's people who couldn't even sign their ballots. They had to have had other people sign them for them. But I didn't know back then what a difference that made in votes until Florida. And it's not the first time. For months, the pandemic has curtailed. Now, this is the opposite, though, mind you. This is something different, and I'm not sure if they're just trying to make you look the other way here. But 2.2 million residents of nursing homes have been among the most vulnerable during the pandemic. It's an open question to what extent people in long-term care institutions are going to be able to participate in our election, says Nina Cohen, law professor. And she says that living in a long-term care in no way restricts your right to vote, but being that they're at highest risk, what's going to happen is it's going to be universal mail-in for them, or they're going to literally have their own little poll place in the nursing homes for the elderly. I have a feeling they're going to play a very large part in those votes are going to play a very large part in the ultimate count of this election. Those, and then these ones, quickly, boom.
We're hearing reports from around the state, voters in Milwaukee, Fox Point, and Oshkosh who never got ballots. The city of Milwaukee knew some of the absentee ballots sent to voters on March 22nd and 23rd never made it to them for whatever reason.
We are going to formally request an investigation by the post office today in terms of what might have happened with those ballots.
In nearby Fox Point, the village manager posted to Twitter saying a box of ballots was returned to Village Hall by the post office, even though nothing was wrong with them. And State Senator Dan Fayen says a postal worker told the Elections Commission they found 3 large tubs of absentee ballots from voters in Oshkosh and Appleton. According to data from the State Elections Commission, as of Wednesday morning, of the absentee ballots sent out across Wisconsin, nearly 270,000 have yet to be returned, but the commission has no way of knowing why or how many ballots were never received in the mail.
The clerk will mark that when he sends the ballots. We might be able to get some information from the USPS about ballots that were in transit still after the election. But there is a data point where we would know whether or not the voter ever received the ballot that was actually
Because they scanned it.
Absentee ballots had to be turned in by 8 p.m. Tuesday or postmarked by April 7th, or they won't be counted. Even though potentially thousands of voters never received a ballot, the commission says there's nothing they can do for them.
It is our understanding at this time that there is no alternative for voters whose ballots were not received by the deadline.
In Madison, Anthony DeBruzzi, Spectrum News.
So basically, what did they say? So I'm sorry, you're screwed. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm really bad. It's our fault. My bad. See you next time. So even though you're not a felon, even though you hitched a ride with the neighbor to go register, and you now had to risk coronavirus standing in a line with a mask on, 6 feet apart for 2.5 hours to vote, to only have your vote not counted because you didn't have a ballot sent to you that you asked for. But guess what? They found the ballots after the election, and they didn't count them. So nearly 1.2 voters requested absentee ballots in Milwaukee. And then if you go down here, it says, another box of ballots returned to our village hall by the post office. We immediately returned them to the post office again for remailing, and they admitted appeared to be nothing wrong with them. This is what we've been dealing with for most of the election season, USPS. In another post, State Senator Dan Fein, I didn't go to that, did I? Okay. State Senator Dan Feinen says a postal worker told the Elections Commission they found 3 large tubs of absentee ballots from voters in Oshkosh and Appleton. I learned today that the WEC received a call from the Postal Services informing them 3 large tubs of absentee ballots from Oshkosh and Appleton were just located. I understand your frustration. Oh, you do? And I'm working hard to try to remedy the situation. They never remedy anything. It always ends up in court, and they always cut a deal, even though they know for a fact so many thousand exactly to the T were not turned in. They were found wherever. All those won't be counted. They will agree to throw so many out, so that and allow so many in under no situation that makes any sense to you or I. Absentee ballots not turned in by 8 p.m. Tuesday or postmarked by April 7 won't be counted. So let's move on to some more ballots found. Oh, another box of ballots. You guys, there must be like a ballot fairy out there that just leaves buckets of ballots everywhere so that we find them right after the election when they don't count for shit. You know how many times I've heard this corny ass excuse? I just want to know what senior citizen running this shit is bouncing out the back door with tubs full of ballots. A $569 million bond. They won't be working there this year because they are scared to get corona. A $569 million bond proposal to build 2 high schools in Midland, Texas. Oh, that was something else. Sorry, guys. This is the beginning. Elsie Chang, host. Weeks after. You want to play it? Let me see if it'll play. It says a box of ballots found in Texas could change the outcome of Midland bond proposal again. Oh, I was right. Then a box of 828 ballots that weren't tallied was found, it says. Right here. $569 million bond proposal to build 2 high schools in Midland failed by 25 votes. After a recount, it passed by 11 votes. And then a box of 820 ballots that weren't tallied had been found. How the hell does this shit happen? Who starts counting votes until they know that they've gotten every single sector, every sector has returned their. Weeks after the election in November, voters still aren't sure if a $500 million school bond has won approval. Through a series of election missteps, the result has flip-flopped back and forth, passing, then failing, then passing again. It started by passing with 12 votes for a week until someone noticed there had been errors in the totals. Turned out the ballots had not been included in the final tally. When they were added in, the package failed by 25. Bond advocates called for a hand recount. Dave Joyner was there and says they didn't finish till 4 a.m. when finally, that's it. There's no more ballots, and so the results are done. Like the fact is, bond passed. Joyner is part of a political action committee, a PAC, which is advocated for the bond, meaning this PAC spent money to produce ads for the community to see reasons why they should get the $560 million bond to build the schools. Excuse me. And it says, he says moments after the recount results were in, and when everyone looked closer, they realized there was a bigger problem. Well, how could they be off by 820 something votes? Hundreds of ballots had disappeared. Are you sure there aren't 800 votes somewhere? Are we missing a box? Said Joyner. Deborah Land, it is wild. When they came and said, well, apparently we have a discrepancy. This is why in my area, they get a sheriff that 24/7 watches them votes. All the ballots go into an actual jail cell. I'm not kidding. In the county building. I only know that because my ass was in a holding cell next to it one time. The only reason I know, during an election, I was in the holding cell next door. But all the ballots from the vote, they go into there, and literally the sheriffs watch it. But anyway, not some old lady with a grudge. You know what I'm saying? A Karen. So how did they just hear this? Brian Hodge is the head of the political action committee which opposed the bond. Hodge's frustration was on full display at the public meeting where officials were counting the paper ballots to find out what happened. Was there something wrong with voting machines? Had the recount results been way off and then a county staff member found something, a ballot box? How did they just find a ballot box? They just said, we walk in and we found it, like, ta-da, it's there. Hodge, did you see how I'm sweaty, Mitch? I can't answer it, dude, because no one knows. I mean, I don't know. So it says, for over a month, the county claimed all ballot boxes were accounted for until they found one they didn't know was lost. See, that's what I'm trying to say. Each county should have its own box so that there was never a box missing when they went in to count, and then suddenly a box that was supposedly already in there was found outside with another 800 ballots in it. So I don't know. It doesn't sound real promising. I don't know how it ends. Let's talk about Wisconsin. Have I hit your state yet? Have I? Are you thinking a little bit about maybe going down and voting by yourself instead of sending it in the mail? I mean, come on. You go to the grocery store how many times a week? Oh, I don't know why the camera is not available on this one, and neither is it on USA Today. I don't know why it's like that. It just is. Oops. Sorry about that, guys. So anyway, let's do this. Wisconsin is discovering ballot problems with absentee ballots, including hundreds that were never delivered. And it says, attention turned to missing absentee ballots Wednesday as state official reported. Guess what, guys? More tubs of ballots. So here we go. 3 tubs of them were discovered in a mail processing center, and the Milwaukee Elections Commission called for an investigation into a separate set of undelivered ballots. So you have 2 different things going on. You got 3 tubs that just turned up, and you got another set that hasn't turned up that's supposed to be there still. Fox Point officials said 100 or more ballots a day were returned to the villages undelivered in the week leading up to the election. Discoveries emerged as would-be voters across the state expressed a host of frustrations trying to obtain absentee ballots so they could avoid going to the polls during the Rona. Many have said ballots they requested long ago did not arrive by Tuesday, the deadline for getting their ballots postmarked. I learned that the Wisconsin Election Commission received a call from the postal worker informing them 3 large tubs from Oshkosh and Appleton were just located, says Senator Dan Fine of Fond du Lac. Is that him? Oh, if that's him, he is a goofy. I know exactly who that is. And then, of course, when they were asked about these ballots, they said, what? We don't have answers on that at this point, Wolf said during an online media briefing. Representatives for the Postal Service did not immediately respond to questions about the undelivered absentee ballots. Let's move along. Ta-ta-da! San Francisco. Have I hit your city yet? Have I hit your state? Are you feeling a little frustrated? This is 2001, guys. This is no time recently. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want to show you how fucking often this happens. Does this not sound like the exact story I just read you 3 times? San Francisco Election Department finds ballot boxes floating in the bay. Days after lids of 8 ballot boxes were found floating in San Francisco Bay, they found an additional 248 ballots that were not counted in the election early this month. This is infuriating. First of all, as a supervisor, this is news to me, and I'm getting angrier and angrier, says Tom Amiano. I bet you Tom's got a good job now. A call was not immediately returned from the Department of Elections. Of course it wasn't. They're not going to give you a statement. They don't have a statement. Anyway, Measure F was declared a loser by 533 votes. And I bet you they were in those eight tubs floating in the bay. Guys, this is nothing new. This has been going on. That's why Trump says, don't do this. Go vote in person because they will steal the election if you vote by mail. They have 1,000 different ways with the vote if you vote by mail. Get your ass up and go to the poll. Tell your boss, your family, whoever, I'm going in person. Put your mask on, just like if you had to go to the grocery store because the baby needs some Pampers. It's that simple. It's also that important. I want to show you guys something really quick. This is the Heritage Foundation. Since everyone on CNN and MSNBC is real big about saying voter fraud does not exist, voter fraud is a fiction of Donald Trump's imagination. Voter fraud is, Donald Trump's way of being racist against minorities, yada. The Heritage Foundation actually created this. It's very long and it would take me hours to go through, but I'm just going to show it to you briefly. A sample of what it's like. Okay, this is a sampling of election fraud cases from across the country. Over 1,071 proven instances of voter fraud, 938 criminal convictions, 43 civil penalties, 74 diversion programs, 8 judicial findings, and 8 official findings. This is view the database at heritage.com/voter fraud. I'm not affiliated with Heritage Foundation in any way, shape, or form. I just read this and went, oh. So it talks a little bit in the key about what types of voter fraud there is, and it goes right into the states, guys. And you get literal names, the situation, what year they did it in, whether they were a citizen or an illegal. I mean, everything about voter, situations of voter fraud that doesn't exist. And last but not least, for all of us to leave this video with a big smile, let's talk about the dead cat who got a voter registration in the mail last week, guys. Last month. In a presidential election, there's always a push to get people registered to vote. Yes, get you guys especially. We need to get out the vote people out, because the blue people are definitely out there with their get out to vote people. We need our, I know at the end we have the base and the enthusiasm, but we really need to get people registered. Anyway, just be in general, get people registered to vote. So for one Atlanta family, that push got a little interesting. Ron Tim said he checked his mail Wednesday and he found a voter registration application addressed to Cody Timms, his cat, who had died about 12 years ago. A great cat, indoor and outdoor, loved his family, loved his neighborhood. He was 18 and a half when he passed away. The Timms were surprised and a bit amused when they saw what Cody received in the mail. There is a huge push, but if they're trying to register cats, I'm not sure who else they're trying to register. I'm not sure if they're trying to register dogs or mice or snakes, Carol Tim said. The Secretary of State's office said the application did not come from its office and that third-party groups often use mailing lists to get names and addresses. Third-party groups all over the country are targeting Georgia to help register qualified individuals, the state secretary's office said in a statement. This group makes you wonder what these out-of-town activists are really doing. Make no mistake about it, this office is dedicated into investigating all types of fraud. The Secretary of State's office said it's quite sure that even if Cody were still alive and showed up at the polls, that he wouldn't be allowed to vote since he doesn't have a license nor a state ID. If you're wondering how Cody would have voted if he were to go to the polls, his owner said he was a Democrat. That's great, guys. Have a good day. I'll see you later.